Speaker, sir, the object of the bill is to implement measures announced in the budget speech. But in fact, when we take a closer look at this finance bill, we see that many measures announced in the budget has either been modified or simply been abandoned. And it is a matter of regret that the Honourable Minister of Finance has not deemed it fit in his intervention to enlighten the House as to why government has been backpedaling on all these measures. Let's start with the fiscal measures. The famous corporate levy. In his budget speech, the Honourable Minister of Finance announced at paragraph 229, and I quote, "I am introducing a levy on companies having gross income exceeding 500 million in an accounting year, or if it forms part of a group of companies where the gross income of the group exceeds 500 million rupees. The private sector was quick to react and condemn this levy, tax on gross income, as opposed to tax on net income. A company may have a high turnover, but low net profit. Companies which form part of larger international group would also have been caught even if their gross income in Mauritius was much less than 500 million. But the various members of the government who intervened during the debate defended this measure, and they took pride in taxing the rich. They hailed the new Robin Hood. So why is it then that such corporate levy is nowhere to be found today in the finance bill? Why has government backpedaled on this measure? Now, who is the mouthpiece of the gros capital? Where is Robin Hood? Next measure, in the annex to the budget speech, it was announced at page 5, item G, partial exemption regime. That partial exemption regime on interest income will not be applicable to various categories of domestic companies, including insurance companies and leasing companies. During my intervention on the budget, I had pointed out that such a measure would amount to ring fencing and was discriminatory in that the global business companies would be treated more favorably from a tax perspective than certain domestic companies. And this is exactly what we had undertaken to the Code of Conduct group of the European Council not to do. So I'm glad to see that in the finance bill, again, government has backpedaled on this measure, because this measure is clearly a harmful tax practice. But if this is the case, then why did the Honourable Minister of Finance not consult with the MRA and the Code of Conduct group before announcing it in the budget? This only goes to show the level of amateurism when we deal with matters affecting the global business sector. Next example of backpedaling, the solidarity tax, the solidarity levy. As the Income Tax Act currently stands, every individual who is resident in Mauritius is subject to a solidarity levy at the rate of 5% on his leviable income in excess of 3.5 million. This levy today is payable irrespective of nationality of the individual. However, in the budget speech, it was announced at paragraph 223, and I quote, "The levy of 5% on the excess amount of chargeable income plus dividend of a resident Mauritian citizen will now be 25% and applicable as from 3 million annually." So in his budget speech, the Honourable Minister of Finance made it very clear, and this is again reproduced in the annex to the budget speech, that only Mauritian resident citizens would be paying the solidarity levy. Of course, during the debate, several members from this House criticized the decision of this government to impose the solidarity levy only on Mauritian residents. This is unjust, highly discriminatory, and totally unjustifiable. Mauritians cannot be taxed more than non-Mauritians. So I'm glad that the government is backpedaling again on this proposition, on this proposal, and Section 28, subsection C of the Finance Bill makes it clear that the solidarity levy would be paid by all residents, irrespective of their nationality. When the decision to increase the solidarity levy was announced in the budget, there was an outcry, especially from the private sector, because the income of certain individuals would have been taxed at 40%. The normal rate of 15% plus the 25% solidarity levy, making a total of 40%. Again, various members of the government, when intervening on the budget and on the radio programs, justified the decision to tax the rich at 40%. Again, the Robin Hood effect. But today, government is again bowing to the lobby from rich individuals and the private sector. The solidarity levy is being capped at 10% of the leviable income of an individual. So from a maximum of 40% announced, now rich individuals will be taxed only at a maximum rate of 25%. Autre mesure qui a été revue par le gouvernement concerne la réforme de la pension. Mais malheureusement, le gouvernement s'obstine à vouloir aller de l'avant avec la contribution sociale généralisée, et ce, malgré les critiques. C'est tout à fait regrettable, Monsieur le Président, que le ministre des Finances, délibérément, je dois dire, fait un amalgame entre le National Pension Fund, Fonds de pension national, et la contribution sociale généralisée. La NPF est un fonds de pension. La CSG est un impôt, une taxe. Et ce n'est pas moi qui le dis, la Cour constitutionnelle et la Cour de cassation en France ont confirmé que la CSG est bel et bien une taxe. Donc, le gouvernement va remplacer un fonds de pension, NPF, par une taxe, CSG. Pour rappel, aujourd'hui, on a 4 types de pensions. La pension de vieillesse non contributive, aussi connue comme pension de vieillesse, Basic Retirement Pension. Tous les résidents à Maurice ont droit à cette pension à partir de 60 ans. C'est payé à partir du Consolidated Fund, des impôts, de la taxe et autres revenus de l'État. Deuxième type de pension est celui qui est payé aux fonctionnaires. Les fonctionnaires y contribuent et une fois à la retraite, ils obtiennent un lump sum et une pension mensuelle. Et l'État, comme employeur, paye le montant déficitaire, là aussi à partir du Consolidated Fund. Les mesures annoncées dans le budget ne concernent pas ce fonds de pension qui va aux fonctionnaires. Troisième type de pension concerne les pensions contributives des entreprises privées. Ces fonds de pension sont réglementés par la Financial Services Commission. Seuls les employés des entreprises privées bénéficient de cette pension à la retraite. Là aussi, la réforme de la pension annoncée par le ministre des Finances ne concerne pas ce type de fonds de pension, hormis l'amendement qui est proposé aujourd'hui à le Private Pension Scheme Act, qui prévoit la création d'un fonds spécial par la FSI pour recueillir les fonds abandonnés. Quatrième et dernier type de fonds de pension, c'est la National Pension Fund, fonds de pension national. La loi oblige à tout employé et employeur de verser un certain pourcentage du salaire de l'employé dans ce fonds, jusqu'à un plafond de 18 740 roupies. C'est un fonds contributif. Une fois l'argent recueilli, il est investi et le montant est payé à la retraite aux employés du secteur privé qui ont contribué dans ce fonds. La NPF est très importante pour les employés du secteur privé parce que, contrairement aux fonctionnaires, ils n'ont pas un fonds de pension qui leur paye une annuité à la retraite. Et de nombreuses entreprises privées n'ont pas de fonds de pension privé. Donc, sous le NPF Act, ils sont sûrs à la retraite d'obtenir un petit montant de pension qui est à peu près 6 500 roupies aujourd'hui. Mais aujourd'hui, le gouvernement va abolir ce National Pension Fund. Donc les employés, dorénavant, ceux qui vont commencer à contribuer, ils ne vont plus avoir droit à cette pension de 6 500 roupies à leur retraite. Il est remplacé par la contribution sociale généralisée. Mais en fait, ce n'est pas un remplacement. Ce n'est pas un remplacement parce que l'argent que les employés vont contribuer dans la CSG ne sera pas utilisé pour les employés seulement. Il va être utilisé à payer un montant additionnel sous la pension de vieillesse, un montant qui est estimé à 4 500 roupies à partir de 2023. Donc la première question qu'on se pose, Monsieur le Président, c'est qui va contribuer à ce CSG, contribution sociale généralisée? Est-ce que seuls les employés du secteur privé seront appelés à y contribuer? Est-ce que les fonctionnaires devront y contribuer? Est-ce que c'est juste et équitable de faire seulement le secteur privé et le secteur informel contribuer à la CSG, alors que ce fonds sera utilisé pour payer tout le monde à l'âge de la retraite, y compris les fonctionnaires? Est-ce que c'est juste qu'un employé modeste qui touche le salaire minimum devra, lui, contribuer à ce fonds, alors que les ministres et le Premier ministre n'auront pas contribué un sou à la CSG, mais ils pourront néanmoins bénéficier d'un décaissement à partir de ce fonds à l'âge de la retraite? Parce que les ministres et les Premiers ministres sont des fonctionnaires, est-ce qu'eux aussi vont devoir contribuer à la CSG? Donc, est-ce juste, est-ce équitable? La Finance Bill, à la page 76, section 42, prévoit que la liste des participants qui devront contribuer à la CSG sera prescrite. Donc aujourd'hui, on ne sait pas qui va contribuer. Est-ce que ce sera seulement les employés du secteur privé, seulement les employés, est-ce que les fonctionnaires vont contribuer, est-ce que les self-employed vont contribuer? Mais on ne peut pas laisser une décision d'une telle importance dans la main du ministre des Finances. Ce n'est pas possible que c'est le ministre des Finances qui va décider, lui, selon lui, dépendant de son humeur, s'il pense qu'un fonctionnaire devrait contribuer ou pas. Donc moi, je trouve très regrettable que la décision soit laissée dans la main du ministre des Finances alors qu'il n'y a pas de régulation. Et le pire, c'est que la loi prévoit que la contribution à CSG commence à partir de septembre 2020, d'un mois et demi, et toujours on ne sait pas qui va contribuer à ce fonds. Donc je pense, par respect aux Mauriciens, le ministre des Finances a le devoir, au moins durant son sommet, d'annoncer qui seraient les personnes qui vont devoir contribuer à la CSG. La deuxième question que l'on se pose, c'est quel sera le montant à être contribué au CSG. Lors de son discours du budget, l'honorable ministre des Finances avait dit au paragraphe 169, et je cite, « Au travers de ce nouveau système effectif à partir du 1er septembre 2020, les employés percevant une rémunération jusqu'à 50 000 roupies par mois contribueront à hauteur de 1,5% du salaire mensuel, alors que les employeurs contribueront à hauteur de 3%. Pour les employés gagnant plus de 50 000 roupies par mois, la contribution sera de 3% du salaire mensuel pour les employés et 6% pour les employeurs. Donc, pour les employés de moins de 50 000 roupies, la contribution totale sera de 4,5% de son salaire, alors que pour les employés touchant plus de 50 000 roupies, ça aurait été de 9%. Et quant à les self-employed, paragraphe 190B du budget, d'autre part, un montant de 150 roupies sera versé par les travailleurs indépendants à la CSG. Donc, pour les self-employed, seulement 150 roupies. Donc, je parle d'un médecin, d'un avocat, d'un notaire, d'un architecte, de tout ce bon monde qui gagne très bien leur vie. Tout ce bon monde aura à contribuer seulement 150 roupies par mois à ce fonds. Est-ce juste? Est-ce équitable? Et maintenant, volte-face du ministre des Finances, on apprend à travers le Finance Bill, à la page 77, que c'est le ministre lui-même qui va fixer le montant que les employés, les employeurs et les travailleurs indépendants devront contribuer. Mais, Monsieur le Président, c'est extrêmement dangereux de laisser au seul bon vouloir de Monsieur le ministre la responsabilité de fixer le montant de la taxe qu'on devra contribuer à la CSG. C'est au Parlement que revient la responsabilité de fixer le montant d'une telle taxe. C'est au Parlement de fixer le montant qu'on devrait contribuer au CSG. Mais ce changement d'attitude et de langage n'est certainement pas anodin. Le ministre sait pertinemment que la CSG est insoutenable dans la durée. Et ce n'est pas que moi qui le dis. Lors d'un séminaire organisé par l'Actuarial Society of Mauritius, tous les intervenants, tous les acteurs, tous les experts en la matière ont d'une seule voix critiqué la CSG et ont mis en exergue, chiffre à l'appui, que la CSG est insoutenable. Il y a même un expert qui, dans un entretien publié dans un quotidien, a comparé le CSG à un Ponzi scheme. Si le gouvernement s'obstine à aller de l'avant avec le CSG, on fonce droit dans le mur. Et le ministre n'aura alors pas d'autre choix que d'augmenter le taux de contribution, d'augmenter la taxe chaque année. Et c'est bien pour cette raison que le ministre des Finances veut avoir toute la liberté, à travers les regulations, d'augmenter le taux et l'assiette de la contribution sociale généralisée comme bon il veut. À titre d'exemple, Monsieur le Président, en France, au moment de l'introduction de la contribution sociale généralisée en 1991, le taux était de 1,1% sur les revenus d'activité. Mais depuis son introduction, le taux et son assiette n'ont cessé d'augmenter. Aujourd'hui, le taux est à 9,2% sur les revenus d'activité, soit une augmentation de 900% depuis son entrée en vigueur. Donc, Monsieur le Président, nous faisons un appel au bon sens de ce gouvernement de ne pas aller de l'avant avec la CSG et de consulter tous les gens, les actuaires, et venir avec une autre réforme de la pension. Autre volte-face, minimum wage support. At paragraph 365 of the budget speech, the Honourable Minister of Finance stated, "Finally, and more importantly, the government would do everything to protect employment, but also support those faced with a period of technical unemployment. To this end, over the next 6 months, 15 billion rupees have been earmarked to provide an exceptional minimum monthly support of 5,100 rupees to each beneficiary. 15 billion rupees earmarked to support those who face technical unemployment. And the worker will get at least 5,100 rupees per month for 6 months. But today, the Finance Bill is not doing this. The Finance Bill is amending Section 84 of the Workers' Rights Act and providing that a worker who reckons more than 30 days and less than 6 months of continuous employment with the same employer, he will be entitled to payment of a transition unemployment benefit of 5,100 rupees per month for the period starting 1st July 2020, ending 31st December 2020. So 5,100 is not a minimum as announced in the budget. It is a flat amount. But what is 5,100? That's half of the minimum wage. Hardly enough to feed a family. And with 15 billion rupees earmarked, frankly, government could and should have done better. The more so that we all know with the current economic situation, it will be very difficult for those workers to find a new job after 6 months. So at the very least, the Minister of Finance should revisit this, because I'm certain the 15 billion rupees will not be spent if we only give 5,100 rupees per month to those who have lost their job. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, sir, we do welcome the decision of the government to increase the amount payable to workers who have lost their job as transition employment benefit for the period 1st of April 2020 to 31st March 2021. For the first 6 months, they will be getting 90% of their salary. But like Honourable Duval, we are also very concerned about the proposed amendment to Section 72 of the Workers' Rights Act. Under the proposed amendment, an employer cannot reduce its workforce without first asking for financial support from the Development Bank of Mauritius, from the State Investment Corporation, and from the Mauritius Investment Corporation. And it is only if the financial support is turned down that he can reduce the workforce. And if he doesn't ask for financial support, automatically it is deemed to be unjustified termination, which gives rise to 3 months. Either he will have to reinstate the worker or pay him punitive rate of 3 months per year of service. Now, this amendment presupposes that people who close down their enterprise do that because of financial difficulties. But there may be other justifiable reasons for someone to close down his business. For example, if the main shareholder has passed away, if the key earner has passed away, if they have lost the representation, they have lost the exclusivity contract, if the person is migrating, leaving Mauritius to go away. So in these circumstances, getting financial support from DBM and the rest will not be of any assistance to him. So my appeal to the government, and especially the Honourable Minister of Labour, is that propose an amendment. We have no problem if the Redemption Board consider as one of the criteria in determining whether the dismissal is justified or not. One of the criteria is whether the employer has tried to secure financial assistance. But making it a precondition, I think, is very hard and will lead to a lot of companies closing down. Mr. Speaker, sir, very quickly, I welcome the amendment to Section 29 of the Civil Status Act dealing with Muslim Family Council. This amendment corrects an injustice. Ever since the Muslim Family Council was set up in December 1990, the chairperson and members of council were not entitled to any fees or remuneration. And I have not seen in any other statutory body where the statute setting up that body expressly provide that the chairman and council members were not entitled to any fees and remuneration. Now, with this amendment, the chairperson and other council members will be paid such fees and allowance as may be prescribed. But we should not be, too surprised why the situation was like this, because honourable members will recall the Muslim Family Council was set up in 1990 after the government had abolished Muslim personal law and after a case challenging the constitutionality of that decision was before the Privy Council. And in order not to get a reverse, not to have the Privy Council reverse the decision in the Alam Biwa case, government came up with the Muslim Family Council. So we welcome this decision to provide funding to the members of council. But I think that it's a missed opportunity. We could have done much more to the Muslim Family Council and give them the status of a tribunal, because after all, they are the ones who regulate Muslim marriages and dissolution of marriages. So they should be given powers to summon people, and if a witness is not coming, they should be able to sentence the people for contempt. Now, the Pharmacy Act. The Pharmacy Act is being amended to extend the definition of specified standards to also include Indian pharmacopoeia. Following a PNQ of the 15th of June 2020, the Honourable Minister of Health tabled a list of pharmaceutical products that had been purchased during the curfew period following the COVID-19 pandemic, and we came to know that at least one supplier, Hyperform Limited, had supplied pharmaceutical product worth 16 million rupees, but these products did not comply with the specified standards. It only complied with Indian pharmacopoeia. So this proposed amendment to the Finance Bill confirmed that at the time Hyperform supplied products, such product did not conform with the applicable standard, namely British, French, United States, or European pharmacopoeia. Products supplied by Hyperform were in breach of the Pharmacy Act. I'm not saying that the products were substandard. They were simply illegal. And this is why the principal pharmacist procurement unit refused to give his clients, being a law-abiding citizen, he could not have condoned the use of public funds to pay for an illegal product. But today what we are asked to do, Mr. Speaker, sir, is shocking. Because not only are we amending the Pharmacy Act to allow for Indian pharmacopoeia, which I have absolutely no issue with that. I have absolutely no issue to give the status of specified standard. But if we look at Section 74, subsection 19 of the Finance Bill. Section 50. Section 50 talks about the amendment to Pharmacy Act. Section 50 shall be deemed to have come into force on 1st January 2019. We are being asked today to backdate a legislation so that high-perform can get away and get paid this money. How can we be asked to condone an illegal act? How can we be asked today to backdate a law, to make it lawful, to do what this government did and know full well was illegal and lawful at the time they did it? And that's not all, Mr. Speaker, sir. Section 55C of the Section 55C of the Finance Bill purports to amend Section 21 of the Public Procurement Act. Now, the Public Procurement Act, Section 21, deals with emergency procurement and currently provides that a public body may purchase goods and other services or work from a single supplier without competition in cases of extreme urgency. And we have all seen how emergency procurement has been used during the curfew period of COVID-19 pandemic to give contract to petits copains to supply more than 1.1 billion rupees worth of masks, protective equipment, and ventilators, all done in total opacity. We have seen how a Spanish company, I don't know what he was doing, how he even know where Mauritius stands. That Spanish company, Pack and Blister, on the 3rd of April, won the jackpot, almost $500 million, 500 million rupees, to supply masks and equipment. And we know, yesterday it was in the press, that the beneficial owner of this company has been involved in fraud, tax fraud in Spain. Before giving that contract, wasn't there any due diligence? No one cared to check who you're giving it to? No one cared to check what packing machines, a company involved in packing, blistering packing machine, has to do with ventilators? State Trading Corporation, whose managing director is related by marriage to at least one supplier who obtains a tender? A clear-cut case of breach of Prevention of Corruption Act. Et samedi dernier, lors d'une conférence de presse, le ministre de la Santé, entouré d'autres ministres, notamment l'honorable Kaviramano, vient justifier l'injustifiable en disant, et je cite, « dans situation emergency, pas capable de tout ça ». So good governance does not apply to emergency procurement. So Prevention of Corruption Act does not apply to emergency procurement. And they are challenging us to report the matter. To whom? To ICAC, whose own Director General has bypassed procurement procedures to refurbish his office. When the supplementary appropriation bill was debated, Mr. Speaker, sir, we on the opposition asked a full select committee to shed light on the medical supplies procured during confinement. Now I understand why government does not want to put a select committee in a prison ladan. Coming back to the finance bill, and I'll end on this, Mr. Speaker, sir, we are to amend now the section dealing with emergency procurement to allow public bodies to purchase consultancy services without competition in cases of extreme urgency. L'appétit vient en mangeant. We have already given our copain-copine contract for supply of masks. Now we want to amend the law so that we can give contract for the purchase of consultancy services. So now, with this amendment, what this government wants to do, no doubt the Ministry of Finance wants this power to buy services of quincaillerie, bijoutier, hôtelier, footballer to advise him on procurement of medical supplies without going through emergency procurement process. Et puis ils osent parler de zéro tolérance à la corruption. Quelle blague, quelle plaisanterie de mauvais goût. En tout cas, nous, au sein de l'opposition, on ne va jamais condamner cette décision. Merci, Monsieur le Président.